Hello everyone, and welcome to the Power Up Paint Can Challenge. We're going to be using my home-built lubricity testing machine weighted with a paint can to see if Lucas Oil Heavy Duty Oil Stabilizer or this stuff I just bought at Walmart, Hyper Lube, can hold up and compete with Power Up. Alright, so I've got the bearing turned to a fresh spot for our first test we're going to run. Our procedure here is that we're going to take each bottle. I'm going to get a pinky dab's worth. I'm going to rub it around the race on the bearing here. And then we're going to load it up and run the test for 30 seconds. So I'm going to go ahead and do the pinky dab's worth now. Alright, so we're loaded up with the pinky dab's worth of Power Up. We're going to go ahead and load the bearing in. Alright, bearing loaded, paint can weighted. I'm going to wait for my clock to get a good time here to run 30 seconds worth of testing. 3, 2, 1, go. Alrighty folks, 30 seconds on Power Up with the paint can. Let's investigate the score mark. This is hard to see with my lighting in here and the old camera on my old iPhone 4. There we go. Pretty impressive. Alright, now we'll get everything set up for Lucas Oil. Okay, so I've got the bearing turned to a new spot, and while I was off camera, I used some brake parts cleaner and some sandpaper just to make sure there wasn't any material left on the bearing race. So now we're going to go ahead and do our pinky's dab's worth of Lucas Heavy Duty Oil Stabilizer. This stuff's really thick and not a whole lot came out, so I'm going to do 2 pinky dabs worth. So if you've used this Lucas Oil Stabilizer before, you know it's really thick, and like I said, not a whole lot came out, so I put 2 pinky dabs worth on there. So we'll go ahead and load this bearing in and give her a whirl. Alright, bearings loaded in. Paint can. 30 seconds, starting in 3, 2, 1, go. profile probably going to be a lot bigger mark. Saw how quickly it came to a stop there. Lucas Oil heavy duty stabilizer, obviously not able to stand up to the pressure like Power Up. You may or may not be able to see this, but there is definitely still some oil residue on the bearing race here, but there's also a lot of material left over. So when I was looking at the oil additives at Walmart, I'd never seen this Hyper Lube before, but the reason I bought it and wanted to use it in this test is because the first claim it makes here is that it increases film strength. So as we already saw, Power Up had some pretty impressive film strength, and the Lucas Oil Stabilizer on its own didn't seem to have very much film strength at all. So I'm interested to see if this Hyper Lube is going to outperform the Lucas. And another interesting thing to note real quick here is that it claims to be able to extend oil life by up to 50%. And it's interesting because the Lucas also makes the same claim that can extend oil life at least 50% longer, but it doesn't have any claims about its film strength. Alright, so I've got the bearing turned to a fresh spot. I've gone ahead and brake parts cleanered and sandpapered the bearing, and now we're going to go ahead and see what Hyper Lube can do. Well, the stuff's pretty thick, but not quite as thick as the Lucas. I was able to get out a pretty decent amount with one pinky dab's worth, so we're going to roll with it. Alright, our bearing's loaded up. We got our paint can. Let's give her a whirl here. In 3, 2, 1, go. Came to a pretty quick stop there. And again, we've got a pretty significant wear mark in the bearing, so it appears the film strength of the Hyper Lube is not up to par compared to Power Up, not even in the same ballpark. But it does appear to be on the same level as Lucas. Might be really hard to see, but there's a small score mark where I have the bearing loaded at right now, but I'm going to go ahead and run it on that small score mark, because what I'm going to do is run it dry with the paint can, because the lack of protection provided from Lucas and what's this stuff called, Hyper Lube, all by themselves was definitely not impressive, especially when compared to the Power Up. So I'm going to run it dry as a control. And again, I did clean up the bearing race with brake parts cleaner and sandpaper. So we're gonna let this thing roll here. 3, 2, 1. Got pretty loud. So I'd say overall this is about the same size as the score marks from just the Lucas and the Hyper Lube. So using those products solely by themselves, they clearly do not provide any film strength at all. Well, there you have it, folks. I hope you enjoyed the Power Up Paint Can Challenge. I was definitely expecting Power Up to win, but I was not expecting Lucas or Hyper Lube to perform so poorly. Considering they are additives and are meant to be mixed with oil, I suppose I will mix them up with their recommendations and do another paint can challenge with them mixed up as they're recommended to see if they actually do anything. To see if Hyper Lube can back up its claim that it does increase film strength. Because we will find out for sure. Alright, hope y'all enjoyed it. Have a good night.